أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ومولانا بالقاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وتراجمة لوحيه. So as we've said last week, this is an extremely long section of the tafsir of Ayatollah Jawadi on Jamia. And we are going to try our best to keep it succinct, concise, selective. But there are many important points which also I don't want to waste. So let's see how we go, inshallah. Tarajumatan liwahihi, we are saying to Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen you and preferred you to be the explainers of His revelation. Tarajim, so just to recap, because if I don't recap, then it'll be hard to follow. So I'll do a very quick recap and then we'll go into the discussion of today. Tarajim, we said, was plural of tarjuman, which means to explain and elucidate. And wahi is literally meaning to communicate something quickly and secretly, but mostly it's used to refer to divine revelation. So Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam are the explainers of the revelation of Allah. The primary and first explainer of the Qur'an was, of course, the Holy Prophet, and thereafter it was Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Wahi, we said, refers to two things. One is the Book of Allah, and that is to the Prophet alone. We don't believe that Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam have any wahi of Qur'an. Qur'an was revealed in its entirety to the Holy Prophet, but the wahi does continue with the Imams, but this is a different type of wahi. It's called the wahi of explanation, or bayani or tabyini. And these are the knowledges, the inspirations given to Ahlul Bayt, and this is reflected in their hadiths of the Prophet, the Imams, and Lady Fatima. And the famous saying of Thaqalain shows that the way for humanity to be saved is to hold on to these two things, Qur'an and Sirah, Sunnah of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. However, the main point we said last week was a great injustice has been done to Muslims and to humanity at large. And that's because there were some very evil, selfish rulers to maintain their political power. They tried with all their effort to reduce the position of the Imams, to take political power away from them, and also to muddy the waters regarding the knowledge and spiritual position of the Prophet and the Imams. And this puts people into doubt. How did they do this? They did negative portrayals, limiting the amount of contact people had with them so that their wisdom does not spread. The result of this was that they exploited the people, they played with their lives, they played with the leadership, and they inserted wrong things into hadith, and they inserted wrong things also from other religions. These are known as Israeliyat. They spread lies, and therefore the primary explainers of the revelation of Allah, people were moved away from them, and instead of Aimmah and the Prophet, unfortunately, highly, highly questionable personalities have been put as kind of authorities. Let us now go on to our fresh discussion of today, and that is the issue of tahrif, or changing the Qur'an. We have this issue that is leveled against the Shias, unfortunately, that we somehow have a different Qur'an, and because of this we are not true believers, and even to the extent that some people have said that we are non-believers because apparently we have a different Qur'an. Let's examine that and look into it in more detail. No one has ever claimed any additions have been made to the Qur'an. So the discussion we are going to have now is, has something been removed from the Qur'an? We will say our position is absolutely not. There is not a single letter, word, or anything that has been added or removed from the Holy Quran. In fact, we'll go one step further and say that there are actually more reports in the Sunni books regarding subtractions from the Quran, and not only from scholars, Yes, you can find, as I said last week, you can find some very limited people who are scholars of Shia Islam who believe in Tahreef. They have largely been discredited by the scholars. The position is clear. We do not believe in Tahreef of the Quran, but in the Sunni world, not only scholars, even some of their major personalities have believed and did believe in the subtraction from the Quran. Let's have a look at a few of them. Number one, Umar, surprise, surprise, he believed that there was something called the verse of Rajm. Rajm means stoning. In fact, even during his time of Khilafat, when he had made some efforts to collect the Quran, he gave this view that there was a verse called Rajm, the verse of Rajm, and this should also be inserted into the Quran. It was there, it has been removed, put it back. However, because he was alone in this and he had no other supporters or witnesses for this, it was not accepted from him. However, he still maintained that the Quran that we have is incomplete because the verse of Rajam is not included, and he remained regretful that this was not included. Because he did not have the scope or opportunity or power for this, he never insisted that this should be done. This should be done, meaning put the verse back, what he believed the verse was. And he didn't have the ability to force this through. In fact, he was so affected by this, history shows, that in the final days of his life, he gave a speech in which he said, I am duty bound before I die to tell you of something, and you are duty bound according to your ability that you tell others. And it is this, that Allah chose Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and revealed to him his book. And amongst those verses was the verse of Rajam. See, even until the end of his life. The verse of Rajam, which we used to recite and memorize and reflect upon. The Holy Prophet acted upon it, and we also acted upon it. I now fear that with the passing of time, someone will say that the verse of Rajam is nowhere to be found in the book. What was this verse that he felt was there once upon a time, but now it is not there and it has been removed? But there are two versions that have been recorded in history about what this supposed verse was. One version says that, if a person, a man and a woman, if they commit fornication, then stone them. And sometimes it is reported as this, Nakala min Allahi wallahu azizun hakim, that he puts, that was added to the true verse of the Quran. So there are different reports as to what exactly this verse of Rajam was, that he felt was there once upon a time and it has been removed. But khulasa, the summary is that Umar believed in subtractions from the Quran, and this is one example. Number two, it has been reported from Hudhayfa that Umar asked me that according to you, O Hudhayfa, how many verses does Surah Ahzab contain? I replied 72 or 73. It is actually 73. He says, I replied 72 or 73. Umar then said, the number of verses of this surah was close to the amount of verses in Surah Al-Baqarah, and the verse of Rajam was also there. Now, according to this, if we do the maths here, it means that in the view of Umar, because Surah Al-Baqarah has 286 verses, Surah Al-Ahzab has 73. So therefore, he believes 2/3 of Surah Al-Ahzab has been subtracted from the Quran, that it was almost to the level of Surah Baqarah. Surah Baqarah has 286, Ahzab has 73. So therefore, he believes that 2/3 of Surah Al-Ahzab has been subtracted and decreased from the Quran. Example number 3. It has been reported from Aisha that in the Quran there was a verse which said that if a child is fed 10 times by a nursemaid, it becomes mahram for her. This was then abrogated and it became 5 feedings. This verse was present until the death of the Holy Prophet. It used to be recited and we used to act upon it. This verse was kept tucked under my bed. But when the Prophet died, I became so occupied, a domestic animal came and ate it. This is the view of Aisha. Our reaction is as follows. Firstly, this is false. The whole premise is false. because the milking rules for children and making them mahram is about childhood. It's not about any old person can just go and be fed 10 times. This is what she was asserting, that if you want to make someone your mahram, feed them the milk of a woman 10 times and they become mahram. So Agha says this was completely a lie by Aisha. Why would she lie about something like this? Why would she need to make up something like this about 10 feedings? Because she wanted to keep company with non-mahram men for the Battle of Jamal. She knew she had to keep company with those people and spend time with them to discuss the battle and all of that. So having to spend close time with them, she came up with this. And then to justify this rule of becoming mahram, she made up that there was a verse and it was tucked under my bed and then an animal came and ate it. I mean, where do we start with this? Number one, the ruling is wrong. It's to do with childhood. The making of a mahram of a child, when he grows up, he becomes your mahram, is when you feed him during childhood in a very specific period of childhood for a specific length of time. We're not going to go into that in detail, but basically it doesn't apply to adults. She's claiming that even adults, if you feed them 5 times, it used to be 10, then it got changed to 5, and this was a verse in the Qur'an. So that itself is completely false. The other thing you have to think about is how do they feed if they're non-mahram? They feed on a woman's milk. That itself is, a ridiculous thing to say. And then we have that, why was it kept under your bed of all places? So what? All the other scribes of the Quran, they didn't know about this. They didn't hear about this. They didn't record this verse. It was one verse particularly that you kept under your bed, and then an animal comes and eats it. I mean, where do we begin with the ridiculousness of this? Anyway, without going into her other indiscretions, which are many, the main one being unforgivable fighting against Imam Ali alayhi salam, standing in opposition in an armed battle against the Wali of Allah. And if you want to know more about the position of Wali of Allah, then please refer to my lectures on yearning for Imam Mahdi, Ajalallahu Ta'ala Farajuhu Sharif. So let's not look at her other indiscretions for the moment because we're just discussing Quran. History shows that whenever she wanted to keep company with someone, she would send them to her nieces to get milked. And then she would say that, well, now that they have been milked, they are my mahram. Other wives, such as Salma, did not agree with this view. The discussion is very much longer than this, but as I said, we're going to be concise, so we will suffice here. Example number 4. Umar asked Ubay about 2 verses that are now lost from the Quran. He said, yes, there were 2 verses, and yes, they are now lost. Similar thing has been reported from Abu Bakr as well, that he believed that verses have been lost from the Holy Quran. Again, not going into details, being concise as possible. Number 5, according to Umar, a verse is missing from Surah Hajj. Number 6, another verse supposedly missing from Surah Ahzab, and many more instances. So what we conclude is this, that hang on a second. If you are pointing the finger at Shias, saying that we believe in changes to the Quran, in fact, you believe in it more than us. We have discredited all of these false beliefs from our side. We ask you, O Sunnis, how are you going to deal with these things which are in your books? And you then claim that your books are completely Sahih. You even call them Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim. How are you going to deal with this? Because you say that these books are completely reliable and correct. Well, the reality is these opinions, all of them, are wrong. All of these allegations and assertions that there have been subtractions from the book of God are wrong, and they don't suit the sanctity of the Quran. But this was just a point we wanted to make it clear that you have the problem more in your school of thought than we have in ours. You telling us that we have a different Quran, we should be telling you that you believe in a different Quran. We are completely clear and we have discredited all of these. Anyway, let's move on. Then we have another shocking episode which has been recorded in their books, which is the issue of the Satanic verses, the fable of Gharaniq. That is also a shocking one, where they believe that Shaitan somehow interjected into the revelation. Imagine, I will just summarize right now because I think we don't want to go on too long. We'll have to push this for the next session. That somehow Shaitan interfered in the revelation of Qur'an. He inserted and interjected certain things in the revelation upon the tongue of the Prophet. Na'udhu billah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless Prophet and Ahlul Bayt. They are completely free from any of these allegations. What does that say? It says that Allah could not prevent shaitan. It says Quran has been infiltrated by shaitan. But we will discuss this at length, inshallah, in the next session. I think I'm going to stop here because, again, we're trying to go to half an hour, 30, 35 minutes max. We take questions if there are any.
But in general, do the Sunnis like the is their mainstream view that Aisha and Abu Bakr and Umar were correct, or they refute this in general?
You see, it's a very confusing situation. So they do refute it in general. They don't, if you ask the Sunni just now, is there anything wrong with the Quran or anything missing? They'll say no. There's nothing wrong and there's nothing missing. We don't believe that anything is missing from the Quran, and that's 100% okay. That's true. But then our question is, how do you deal with what's in your books when you call them Sahih and you believe that they are so, so authentic and nothing in them can be wrong? You have a big problem. This is why our Shia ulama have been so wise, amazing, amazing scholars we have had. They've never ever claimed that any book on the face of this earth is fully authentic except the Quran. So, we are very wise because, as I explained last week, the words of Aimmah alayhimus salam are miraculous in one way, yes, but we don't claim that, there could never be any forgeries or misunderstandings or failures of memory because they are recorded by fallible people, yeah. So we don't make that claim. So that's the strength of our mazhab. Actually, it's a very wise mazhab, but we don't see that in when it comes to the books of the Sunnis.
Were these examples that you cited today given to the Aimmah alayhimus salam, and they were asked their opinion about this, what the Sunnis say, or there's no such reports from us?
I haven't looked into that side of it, but you see, Imams always maintained that the Quran you have is the Hujjat of Allah, is the book of God. Some people do ask this question that isn't this Quran that we have currently defective because it is not the Quran that was being compiled by Imam Ali alayhi salam after the Prophet's death. We say no. That issue we have to leave aside and we just say our Imams told us that this is the book of God, refer to it, recite it, abide by it, act upon it, reflect upon it. This is the word of God, and that is enough for us. Imam Ali alayhi salam's compilation with his notes and all his wisdom and everything put there on the sides, in the margins, and all his notes and everything, that is in the hands of Imam Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman. That's fine, but the Quran we have is 100% the Quran, which is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is a hujjat for us. This is what our Imams have said.
Sheikh, there's a question about the recitation.
So differences in recitation. So what? Yeah, there are different recitations. That is not tahrif. Different recitations are there, and that is not tahrif. Tahrif is in the text, not in the recitation. So the recitation may have slight, very, very slight differences in fatha, kasra, zamma, etc. That is not what we're talking about. That still is not tahrif. The whole of the Muslim Ummah is agreed upon that the Book of Allah in our hands and it is unchanged. I can see a follow-up question, but meaning may change, right? Yes, meaning may change, but the text is the same. You may misread something, but that doesn't mean that the Quran somehow becomes changed or adulterated. But these are all technical discussions around tahrif. Our point in this Ziyarat Jamia session is to explain تراجمة لوحيه, the position of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam as the explainers of the Quran. So this was our second discussion on this line from Zat Jamia, وَتَرَاجِمَةً لِوَحْيِهِ. Inshallah, we'll continue more in future sessions. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.